Hello and welcome to lecture number 67. This is topic 4.14, Interlocking Systems of Oppression. There's two learning objectives today, and the first is to describe the concept of interlocking systems of oppression and its connection to earlier Black feminist activism. Interlocking systems of oppression build on the concept of intersectionality that we discussed in the previous topic. Essentially, this concept argues that social categories such as race, gender, class, sexuality, and ability are interconnected. This reflects the core idea of intersectionality. These identities interact with social systems like education, healthcare, the economy, the justice system, and housing. Their interactions create unequal outcomes for individuals, resulting in either privilege or, in the context we're focusing on today, oppression, particularly for African Americans. This concept examines the various ways in which a person's identity can lead to greater disadvantages or oppression. In education, for example, we see differences in reading scores among different groups, graduation rates, and access to college degrees. Historically, during the Jim Crow era, segregated schools systematically denied African Americans access to quality education, perpetuating inequality for generations. In healthcare, we see disparities in access to medical services, the incidence of chronic diseases among specific groups, and varying health outcomes. In examining healthcare disparities, we also need to consider systematic factors like unequal resource allocation and structural racism within medical institutions. The establishment of Medicare and Medicaid in 1965 was a turning point, but many African American communities initially faced barriers in accessing these services due to discrimination at local hospitals. In the justice system, we observe incarceration rates and sentencing disparities between groups based on identity. The war on drugs, launched in the 1980s, disproportionately affected African American communities, leading to significantly higher incarceration rates compared to white communities for similar offenses. These systems do not operate in isolation. They reinforce each other to create entrenched cycles of privilege and oppression. For instance, systematic barriers in education can limit access to employment opportunities, which in turn affects economic mobility and access to housing. By examining how these systems intersect and reinforce one another, we gain a deeper understanding of how interlocking systems of oppression operate, and recognizing these patterns is crucial for addressing disparities and working towards social justice. The study of interlocking systems of oppression was first articulated by Patricia Hill Collins, and later became a widely adopted framework within the field of sociology. Collins introduced this concept in her work Black Feminist Thought, published in 1990. Notably, she was the first African American woman to serve as the president of the American Sociological Association, a historic achievement in a field that has historically excluded Black voices. As we mentioned earlier, the study of interlocking systems of oppression builds on the work of Black feminist scholars, activists, and writers. Kimberly Crenshaw, whom we've discussed in the previous topic, introduced the concept of intersectionality in 1989, just 1 year before Black Feminist Thought was published. Crenshaw's legal scholarship highlighted how anti-discrimination laws often fail to address the unique challenges faced by individuals at the intersection of multiple marginalized identities, such as race and gender. Even earlier in 1977, the Combahee River Collective issued their collective statement, which articulated the experience of intersectionality and interlocking systems of oppression. Although they did not use the term formally, they described it in vivid detail, and the double or even triple discrimination faced by Black women and Black lesbian women in various spaces. Their statements laid the groundwork for understanding these systems in less academic but deeply impactful ways. This framework critiques the tendency to treat race, gender, class, and sexuality as mutually exclusive categories. Instead, it emphasizes that each facet of a person's identity contributes to their lived experience. In this view, no single part of a person's identity fully defines them. For instance, just because someone is Black does not mean that their experience will be identical to that of every other Black person. Differences in gender, sexuality, and even the shade of their skin can lead to distinct experiences and outcomes. The study of interlocking systems of oppression challenges the oversimplification of identity by showing that oppression is multifaceted and dynamic. And the second learning objective is explain how Black writers have represented interlocking systems of oppression in their work. We are focusing on two writers in particular who explore the lived experiences of Black women and men, illustrating how race, gender, and social class shape perceptions, roles, and economic opportunities. These writers are Gwendolyn Brooks and Audre Lorde. Gwendolyn Brooks was a celebrated poet who was the first African American to win a Pulitzer Prize for poetry in 1950. She explores these themes in her short but powerful poem, We Real Cool. In this poem, Brooks speaks about young Black men or teenagers and how they navigate racism, poverty, and societal expectations. The poem portrays the activities of these boys who have left school and face the consequences of their choices. The rhythmic lines reflect their rebellion, but also hint at the societal pressures that have pushed them into these actions. The poem concludes with the haunting acknowledgement that these activities make them more likely to face early death, illustrating how systemic forces like poverty and racism drastically limits their futures. The other writer, Audre Lorde, examines the experiences of Black women in her book Sister Outsider, which is a collection of essays. In her essay, Scratching the Surface, Some Notes on Barriers to Women in Loving, Lorde delves into the unique disadvantages faced by Black women. She not only critiques the ways in which racism and sexism intersect, but also explores heterosexism, the societal belief that heterosexual love is superior to all other forms of love. This essay challenges dominant norms while advocating for great acceptance of diverse ways of loving and being. In another essay from the collection, Sexism, an American Disease in Blackface, Lorde critiques sociological studies that emphasize the disadvantages faced by Black men while neglecting the unique challenges and violence Black women endure, even within their own communities. Lorde voices her discontent with how these studies overlook the systemic oppression of Black women and shedding light on the intersecting forces of race, gender, and class. Both Brooks and Lorde demonstrate how different aspects of identity, such as race, gender, and sexuality, lead to varying perceptions, stereotypes, and systemic limitations. These perceptions in turn shape the roles that society assigns to individuals and the economic opportunities available to them. Next, we'll examine one of Gwendolyn Brooks' works in greater detail, Maud Martha. It was the only novel that she ever wrote, and it was published in 1953. The novel is an expanded version of a short story she wrote earlier that year, titled We're the Only Colored People Here. The novel follows Maud Martha, a working-class Black woman, as she navigates the challenges of mid-20th century life in Chicago. Brooks' portrayal of Maud Martha is distinctive in its quiet, everyday realism. The novel doesn't focus on grand, dramatic events, but instead on the subtle, intimate struggles and joys of Maud's life. This approach allows Brooks the ability to show the intersections of identity in nuanced ways. It's extremely short, and all of the chapters are more so a collection of vignettes arranged in chronological order. By structuring the novel in this way, Brooks emphasizes the importance of small, everyday moments in shaping identity and experience. The writing has a lyrical feel to it, which makes sense because Brooks was primarily a poet. This poetic quality creates a distinct flow in the narration, blending vivid imagery with an emotional depth that elevates even the most mundane experiences into something extraordinary. Maud Martha uniquely emphasizes the intersections of social class and gender, showing how these aspects of identity combined with race shaped Maud Martha and the other characters' experiences in distinctive ways. One of the novel's central themes is how beauty standards affect women, particularly through the lens of race. Brooks examines the devaluation of darker skin tones and the internalized racism that leads to colorism within Black communities. This portrayal highlights how systemic racism and societal beauty norms not only marginalize Black women externally, but also create divisions and biases within their own communities. This theme echoes the historical realities like the brown paper bag tests, an informal practice used in some Black social circles during the early 20th century to exclude individuals with darker skin tones. In Maud Martha, Brooks shows the reader that there are gradations of discrimination that can vary based on how dark a woman is, and her perceived beauty, and how that is altogether distinct from the discrimination that Black males experience. For example, the expectation to marry for women comes up several times, and the options of partners for someone like Maud are limited by her skin color, beauty, and that also impacts her domestic expectations. In addition to colorism, Maud Martha explores class-based judgments, weaving in the way socioeconomic status intersects with race and gender. Throughout the novel, Maud Martha and other characters often reflect on their economic advancement and aspirations. This is portrayed through their longing for luxury items or housing that would distinguish them within their communities as comfortable or well-off. The novel also examines the privilege afforded to wealthier Black characters, who are often lighter in skin tone. This dynamic underscores how class and colorism intersect, granting greater social acceptance and opportunities to lighter-skinned, wealthier individuals. The novel also highlights how location and different spaces play a role in shaping Maud Martha's experiences. In her predominantly Black community, she navigates the layered challenges of colorism and class discrimination. Meanwhile, in her predominantly white spaces, her race and gender often overshadow her individuality, leading to further marginalization. Through Maud Martha, Brooks challenges dominant narratives about race, gender, and class, providing a deeply personal and layered exploration of identity. Her work reminds readers that oppression operates on multiple levels and that resilience and agency often emerge in quiet, understated ways. And finally, the recap. Interlocking Systems of Oppression describes how social categories are interconnected and how their interaction with social systems creates unequal outcomes for individuals. It was first articulated by Patricia Hill Collins in 1990, and it built on the work of Black feminists, scholars, and activists. Gwendolyn Brooks and Audre Lorde wrote on how the lived experiences of Black women and men result in barriers in how they are perceived, their roles, and their economic opportunities. And finally, Maud Martha examines how social class and identity impact people across different spaces. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, click the thumbnail on the screen. And if you would like more resources to help you study, you can visit apushlights.com/AFAM. I wish you the best of luck with your studies, and I hope to see you back on the next lecture.